Hey, this episode of the Majority Report is brought to you by Manakora Honey. It's getting colder. It's also around holiday time to think of presents for people you love. And this miracle of nature is just the perfect gift. It is a super rare honey that is 100% natural and has some unique properties. Manakora makes Manuka honey. It is a single origin honey that comes from New Zealand. The bees feed on only the nectar of the Manuka tea tree. And it makes honey that is honestly like nothing you have ever tasted before. It has a creamy, almost caramel-like texture. It is the taste is sweet, but just more sophisticated. I don't know what to say. More complex than your typical honey. You use it just like any other type of honey. But what makes Manuka honey super is not just the taste and the sort of like creamy consistency of it. It is super rich in antioxidants and prebiotics, 100 times more than regular honey. On top of that, it contains an antibacterial compound called MGO that can be found exclusively in Manuka honey. Bottom line is, these nutrients support your optimal immune and digestive health, and it is incredibly delicious. It's great. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'll just take it by the spoonful. But it's great in like a yogurt, or put on your cereal, or put on toast with a little bit of butter and a little bit of Manuka honey. It's great if you've got a sore throat. You put it into your hot water with lemon or with your tea.
I mean, this is off-label, but like if you get cold sores, putting on Manakora honey is supposedly helps heal those kinds of things. I get
that
them
makes total
on
sense.
Occasion. Yes.
I've got a bottle. Well, I've got actually 3 different types. I've got the bottle of the MGO 850. They actually come in different amounts of that MGO, which is that antibacterial compound. But I got a bottle of the 850 Manuka honey. It's apparently their best-selling one. I also have a jar where you scoop it out. I can't remember what the number is on that. Maybe 950. And compostable honey sticks, which are great in lunches, or just, I'm walking home from work. I don't want to go get a slice of pizza. I'll take one of those. It really is fantastic. And these things, like, you wouldn't necessarily think about honey as a gift at around the holiday time, but much healthier than, let's say, bringing a bottle of booze or something like that, and totally unique. If you head to manakora.com/majority, you can get $25 off their starter kit, which comes with the MGO 850 plus Manuka honey, a free travel pack of the honey sticks, and a free wooden spoon, and a free guidebook. Perfect gift this time of year. That's manakora.com/majority to get $25 off your starter kit. Again, that has the compostable honey sticks in there. This is just the ultimate honey. Indulge and try some honey with superpowers from Manakora. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description and at majority.fm. And now for that same show I just referenced.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox, on some of the more prominent Supreme Court cases in front of the court at the moment. Also on the program today, Biden administration reckoning with their strategic failure as Israel continues its onslaught of civilians. The U.S. announces $21 million worth of aid for Gaza.
Oh.
Another $21 million.
Oh, million with an M.
Correct.
Okay.
Also, the denial of visas to violent Israeli settlers, and also some West Bank Palestinians. I should tell you, a lot of those violent Israeli settlers, they're from Brooklyn.
So they're dual citizens.
They don't need visas. Yeah. Meanwhile, down Pennsylvania Avenue, the House passes the anti-Semitic, dual loyalty assuming anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism resolution. The Senate, Tommy Tuberville, releases his hold on military promotions, leaving our armed services in a quagmire of wokeness. Senate to vote on a procedural vote for supplemental aid to Ukraine and Israel, among other things. Republicans are expected to tank it. And Kevin McCarthy, bye-bye. He leaves for Speaker to cash in. He's going to leave in January. Meanwhile, Patrick McHenry, bye-bye. I think he feels secure enough in his earning potential to wait until the end of his term. Meanwhile, tonight is debate night. We'll be doing live coverage. It's the final debate, so it's last bootlicks for Vivaswamy and last boot lifts for DeSantis.
You were so close. It's not Vivaswamy, but I mean, you can call him that.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Maybe that can be his new rap name.
I distracted it because I didn't get anything out of the last boot lifts.
Davake. Right? That was his name?
Rhymes with a fake.
Yeah.
So I didn't get anything for those last boot lifts.
It really was great. You just had
U.S. job
trouble on takeoff. Yeah.
Openings drop slightly in October. SAG-AFTRA ratifies its contract with about 75% of about 40% of its union voting yes. Rest in peace, Norman Lear. And lastly, but not leastly, November, the 6th straight month setting heat records on this planet. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. My apologies to Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know. I
mean, who cares?
He's been out of the news for a while.
Half the stuff I can't fit it on here, and so I'm like scribbling like a Vivek and Ramaswamy written on top of each other, and then I don't care, but it stepped on my boot.
It stepped on your joke. It was a great joke.
So another debate, the last debate tonight.
We'll have some fun tonight
on the trail.
Yes. By the way, it's Hump Day. Hello.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Hump Day. I don't want to speak for anybody else here, but I'm going to probably be drinking a decent amount tonight during the debate. So
wouldn't have it any other way.
There you go. The most intriguing thing will be that it's a News Nation is carrying it, and we'll see if they'll ding us at some point with some false claim that we're not adding value to this thing. Because frankly, I can't even imagine watching this without us mocking it, to be honest with you.
I wonder if adding value to this sort of thing is trying to multiply zero.
Yeah,
right.
There's a good point. We'll save that argument for the court case. Meanwhile, let's talk about this. We are now on resolution number 2 in attempting to sort of silence, I guess, critics of, and never mind Zionism for a moment. This is a blatant attempt to silence critics of an assault on a civilian population that we really don't have an analog to in history. It is the case that we've had civilians in Yemen, let's say, for instance, tens of thousands of civilians killed. We have not seen, in recent memory, but we have not seen the kind of leveling by bombs in this short of period of time, maybe ever.
It's unprecedented.
In terms of like, even you go back to World War II, you did not see the demolition of standing cities and buildings and the dispossession of people take place this quickly.
Yeah. The Financial Times had a piece today looking at specifically damage to urban areas and comparing it to World War II, to Sam's point. And northern Gaza, around, they estimate 68% of buildings have been damaged severely during the conflict. And that is similar.
And we should say conventional weapons, obviously.
Yes, and that's similar
Nagasaki,
to
Hiroshima,
right.
Different ball game.
That's similar to the multi-year-long destruction in like places like Dresden, and in fact, it's higher in terms of percentage.
But this is a flagrant attempt to silence people who are protesting against that attack on civilians, and then also, of course, it's a flagrant attempt to silence people who are critical of the ethno-nationalist state and form of government that exists in Israel. Both those things. We have seen this in the past where people engaging in a boycott, states around the country have said you cannot get hired by the state. If you are a speech therapist in Texas trying to provide services to an elementary school, help some kid who maybe has a lisp or stutters or whatever it is, and you've ever participated in a boycott or supported the boycott of Israel based upon its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, you can be denied that contract on those grounds. That exists in, I don't know how many states it is in this country. I think it's at least maybe a dozen at this point. Maybe half a dozen. And this is like that. And and Jews know that you can be not anti-Semitic, but against the idea of a ethno-national state for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which it doesn't seem to have worked in terms of protecting Jews.
Yeah.
Here's Gerald Nadler from the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which it gets about as it's pretty Jewy there if you've never been. And here's Gerald Nadler rising to speak against this resolution that all anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
More problematically, the resolution suggests that all anti-Zionism, it states that all anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That is either intellectually disingenuous or just factually wrong. And it unfairly implicates many of my Orthodox former constituents in Brooklyn, many of whose families rose from the ashes of the Holocaust. While most anti-Semitism is indeed anti-Semitic, the authors, if they were at all familiar with Jewish history and culture, should know about Jewish anti-Zionism that was and is expressly not anti-Semitic. This resolution ignores the fact that even today, certain Orthodox Hasidic Jewish communities, the Satmar in New York and others, as well as adherents of the pre-Jewish state, pre-state Jewish labor movement, have held views that are at odds with the modern Zionist conception. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, quote, the anti-Zionist worldview of the ultra-Orthodox groups, like the Satmar Hasidim, perceives Zionism and the establishment of the State of Israel as an anti-Messianic act. That is to say that these ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jews believe that only the Messiah can bring about the true Israel. And I assure you, the Satmar Hasidic Jews are certainly not anti-Semitic. I should also note that there are those who try to smear even progressive pro-Israel supporters with the inappropriate label of Israel hater or anti-Zionist. Under this resolution, those who love Israel deeply but criticize some of its policy approaches could be considered anti-Zionist. That could make every democratic Jewish member of this body, because they all criticize the recent Israeli judicial reform package, de facto anti-Semites. Might that be the author's intention?
Well, I would say yes, because it was brought by a Republican House.
Indeed. And I should correct myself. I'm being corrected. It was about 35 or 36 states in the country that now can discriminate against you in hiring if you've been supportive of boycotting. That's seems contrary to the First Amendment, frankly.
Yes.
I don't even know how that hasn't been tested, frankly.
I mean, it's been one of the refrains every time a free speech issue comes up the entire time I've been doing this professionally is like, hey, where do you stand on all these bills going through, like, I don't know if it's ALEC supporting it, but they seem to be very similar going through legislatures across the country. No, let's talk about moderation.
I think part of why it hasn't been challenged is because, like, seemingly what gets to the Supreme Court these days are well-funded right-wing groups that are putting their pet projects to the fore. I saw someone tweet who is a Jewish man essentially saying the House just declared that basically a House of mostly white Christians just passed a resolution categorizing me as an unacceptable kind of Jew. And I feel like that really sums it up here, because as we said on the program and have been recently, the right-wing Christian Zionist project is working overtime right now to redefine anti-Semitism as not hatred of Jews, but of people who are in opposition to, like, white Western power as it exerts itself through the top recipient of our military aid in the Middle East, and that is the Israeli government. And that is a very dangerous proposition because it both puts a target on people's backs who are critics of Israel, as we mentioned, but also dilutes notions of anti-Semitism in the long run and ties them to a foreign country where that is not what, like, the lived experience of people who experience anti-Semitism in this country, are. It's not the immediate reality, I would say, or it's not going to do anything to alleviate those experiences. It'll only exacerbate it.
I would also say that, like, there was a time in this country where the idea that you had to have loyalty to Israel, if you were Jewish, was considered an anti-Semitic slur. Yeah. The idea of dual loyalty was considered an anti-Semitic slur. Apparently, we've put in a little moratorium on that. I should say those BDS laws apparently went up or were they've been challenged. I know, at least in Texas. In Texas, they were upheld. The Supreme Court has refused to at this point review those laws. So you're right about that. All right, we're going to take a quick break in a moment and be back with Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox. First, a couple of words from our sponsors today. I know when you donate money, you want to make sure that it has a lot of impact. In 2007, a group of donors had that exact question. And when they sought out information from charities, they found it hard to get anything other than, nice pictures and stories. Their experience led them to create GiveWell. It's an organization that provides rigorous, transparent research about the best giving opportunities they've found. We've advertised for GiveWell, I don't know now, 5 or 6 years at least. They have spent over 15 years researching charitable organizations, and they only direct funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found in global health and poverty alleviation. This is a great resource for you folks. If you're looking to donate, particularly people tend to do that end of year sometimes. Over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $1 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 150,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. GiveWell wants donors, as many donors as possible, to make informed decisions about high impact giving. And here's the thing. You can find all of their research, all of their recommendations on their site for free. You can make a tax-deductible donation to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't even take a cut. This site, I have found multiple charities through this site that I have given to over the years. And they've shifted over the past couple of years to focus in on, I guess this year, the top 4 performing charities. And for me, the one that I support are direct payments for vaccinations, because in my mind, it's a twofer. One, and we're talking internationally, one, the vaccinations themselves obviously help children from getting diseases and whatnot. And then the direct payments to the family allow them to decide what they're going to do with that money and deploy it in the way that is most useful for them. And all the research shows that's the best way to help alleviate things like extreme poverty, et cetera, et cetera. But in addition to the vaccinations, they also, like, for instance, they have one charity that would provide bed nets to prevent malaria. It costs about $5 for one net. Nets reduce the number of malaria infections. Enough nets and large enough drop in infections can save a life in expectation. So if you've donated through GiveWell before, you can have your donation, even if you've never donated, I should say, through GiveWell before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 right now before the end of the year, or as long as those matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org, pick podcast, enter the Majority Report with Sam Seder at checkout, and make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from the Majority Report with Sam Seder, and you will get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more. They have a lot of research there, and they also incredibly transparent about things that they've messed up on in the past, things where they've given in the past. Really worth checking it out. The site itself is very impressive. Also sponsored today, these guys sent us stuff a long time ago, and I asked Michael if he wanted to use it. He didn't want to use it. And recently it occurred to me, I should use this. Because, things are starting to thin a little bit up here. Talking about Nutrafol. And the thing I like about Nutrafol is you don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. And I've been taking it now, I think, for about a year, and it really does seem to have made a difference. Then I figured, why not? Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement. It is clinically shown to improve your hair growth, clinically shown to increase visible thickness and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated natural science-based ingredients. Their drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Go to Nutrafol.com/men, take their hair health wellness quiz, identify the causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. And they do so by targeting root causes of thinning hair, such as stress and hormones and environment and nutrition, lifestyle and metabolism through whole body health. I'd say I ticked off about 6 of those. I'm 6 for 6 on all of those problems. And it works. Clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months of taking Nutrafol's men hair growth supplements. Take the first step to visibly thicker and healthier hair. Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping When you go to Nutrafol.com/men, enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled NUTRAFOL.com/men. Enter promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code TMR. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Quick break. Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Joining us by phone, Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox. Ian, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
A couple of cases that wanted to talk to you about that are in front of the Supreme Court. Again, we're just in the process where I've heard them, or we've gone through oral arguments. So some of this is speculation, but the first one I'd love you to explain to us is Moore v. U.S. because I've tried to talk about it a little bit. But it at one point it starts getting pretty Byzantine, it seems, and it centers around the ability to assess taxes on profits that have yet to be realized. In other words, someone has an asset and they haven't sold it yet. That's as far as I can get it. Walk us through this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really complex case, but like the bottom line that you need to know about it is that it's a stalking horse to try to prevent very, very wealthy people from having their wealth taxed. And like the thing to understand there, so for the most part, the federal government taxes your income. It taxes the new money that you make. It does not generally tax people's wealth. So if I've got $50 million sitting in a stock brokerage account somewhere, or, sitting in my art collection somewhere or something, the government generally won't tax that money. And there have been some proposals, the leading ones from Senator Elizabeth Warren, to add a wealth tax to the federal taxation system. The idea is that this is a way that we can start to get at the problem of wealth inequality. This is a way that we can make sure that a few billionaire families aren't powerful for generations to come. And so this lawsuit is an effort to essentially shut that down before it happens.
And let me just say this as by way of explanation. If I've got $50 million, let's say I keep it in a CD because I'm very conservative in that respect, but I'm getting 5% interest. The money that I make on interest there, the $2.5 million, that gets taxed.
That's correct.
Or if I have $50 million worth of stock, which I bought for $30 million, and I sell that $50 million, the $20 million gets taxed. If I sell it, but if I haven't sold it, it's considered an unrealized gain because I haven't actually sold it yet.
That's correct. Yeah. So the way the system works now is that people are generally taxed on their profits and not on the wealth itself. And so, and then the other important point that you brought up is that the taxation typically doesn't happen until you sell your investment. So, if I don't have $50 million, but let's say I have $1,000 and I put $1,000 in the stock market and then I sell it a year later for $2,000. I am taxed on the $1,000 in profit that I make. And that rule that you're generally not taxed until it's called realization, you're generally not taxed until you sell or otherwise dispose of the asset, is normally a pretty good rule. It's normally a pretty good rule because it's often difficult to tell how much an asset is worth until it is sold. So you don't want a situation where, someone has an asset, no one knows how much it's worth, and so no one knows how much money this person owes the government in taxes. But there are exceptions. There are actually lots of exceptions where people can be taxed on what's called unrealized income. They can be taxed on, money, assets that have gained value, but that haven't, been sold yet. And the question in this case is whether to cut that all off and basically protect people who have huge stockpiles of wealth from being taxed on the wealth itself and not on just the income that they earn.
Now, just to be clear, we're talking about the federal government's ability here, right? Because I think a lot of people are very familiar that houses and property are taxed by your local governments. And, I can maybe look on Zillow and get an idea of how much my house is worth. but I don't really know. And I may have bought the house for $250,000 and now it's worth 3.25, or something to that effect. I mean, so we do as a society, both on a local level, at least, taxed unrealized gains, right? Because if your house goes up in value, even if you haven't seen that value realized, you get taxed on it. It gets reassessed. So this is a federal question?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So your local government, you often have property taxes. Typically state and local governments have entire infrastructures in place so they can assess the value of people's homes, so they know what the property taxes are. The federal government historically has not had property taxes. And one reason for this is that there's this bizarre provision of the Constitution that is at the heart of this Moore case. It says that direct taxes must be apportioned. And what that means is, like, if, say, Maryland has 8% of the national population, then 8% of the taxes collected, of the direct taxes collected, must come from Maryland. And
by the federal government.
By the federal government, that's correct. And that makes it next to impossible to have any kind of income tax or wealth tax, or really any kind of tax, because wealth and income is not distributed evenly amongst the population of all 50 states. The problem with this direct tax clause, though, is literally no one knows what a direct tax is. The framers didn't know. They wrote it into the Constitution as part of a compromise over slavery, and they didn't actually all agree on what this word means. If you read the Supreme Court's decisions, the Supreme Court's decisions make it clear that they don't really know what it means, and when they tried to say what it means, they just made something up. And so essentially what the plaintiffs are arguing in this Moore case is that a tax on wealth or a tax on unrealized income violates this provision of the Constitution that no one knows what it means.
And we should also be clear that the reason why the federal government can collect an income tax is because there was an amendment to the Constitution that was passed that would theoretically supersede that, right? The 16th Amendment would supersede that clause. But this is not an income tax, and so they argue that it's not properly apportioned. Is that right?
So technically, it's a little more complicated than that. So the reason we can have an income tax, from like the founding until 1895, it was generally understood that we could have income taxes, and then in 1895, in a case called Pollock, the Supreme Court said that no, you cannot have taxes on the income generated from investments. You can't have an income tax on income generated from wages, because of course the Supreme Court back then was controlled by robber barons. But in 1895 they said you cannot have a tax on income from investments. And pretty much everyone thought that decision was wrong. The 16th Amendment was enacted in order to overrule that 1895 decision. And so the way to think of the 16th Amendment isn't that, we couldn't have income taxes and then there was this amendment and now we can. Technically the way to think about it is we could do it, then the Supreme Court said no, and then we enacted an amendment to get rid of the mistake that the Supreme Court made in the Pollock case.
All right, fair enough. And in this particular case, we're talking about monies or wealth, if you will, or value that's being taxed that is overseas. How could that apply to apportion to the states if it's money from overseas? Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if the Supreme Court were to determine that this is a direct tax, then that would be, then the plaintiffs then like the taxes have to be struck down, because it's basically impossible to do a direct tax unless you just have like what is called a head tax, where you say like everyone has to pay $75 no matter who they are, or something like that. That's the only way you can really do it in a way that's apportioned. But anyways, like the specific issue in this case deals with a tax that was part of the 2017 Trump tax bill. And what the Trump tax law did is that it used to be that we tried to tax U.S. corporations who have money that is held in an offshore subsidiary. So like they create a foreign company, they park their money in the foreign company,
and we used to try to tax that money. And, the sympathetic description of what they were trying to do with the Trump tax law is that Congress decided it was too hard to tax that money. So we gave up on trying to tax foreign money that is held by U.S. corporations. And then we said, well, wait a second, that's going to be really expensive to give up that taxing forever. So the law puts in place this one-time offset, which says that if you are a U.S. investor in a foreign company, then you have to pay one-time tax on some of the profits that company has earned. All of this is very complicated, but the reason why the specific tax here matters is because it's taxing people on stock that has gained value but that has not necessarily been sold, unrealized income. And the question is whether it is unconstitutional to do that. And again, if it is unconstitutional to do that, that means that it's not just that this tax gets struck down. This tax is supposed to raise $340 billion, so it's not a small amount of money in place. It means that we can't have wealth taxes. It means that a whole bunch of other existing taxes. So if you are a member of a partnership, if the partnership makes money, the individuals are taxed on it regardless of whether they receive that money or not. That would be unconstitutional. There's entities called S corps and F corps that are taxed in a similar way. There's a long history of taxing foreign investments where people can be taxed before they sell the asset. And if the Supreme Court strikes all of that down, we're potentially talking about trillions of dollars of money that just evaporates. All of a sudden, the federal government needs to figure out how to keep the lights on without hundreds of billions or potentially trillions of dollars in income that it was planning on. So it would be a really, really big deal if the Supreme Court were to strike down all these taxes. The good news is, based on the oral argument yesterday, there didn't seem to be much of an appetite for that.
And was there ever the irony about all of this, I should just say, and that doesn't necessarily have any bearing on the case, is that the reason why we had this problem where corporations would hide their money offshore and we would beg them to repatriate it. We did it in 2004, and Bush gave them a big discount on that taxation, ostensibly under the bill called, I think it was the American Jobs Act, if I remember correctly, which ended up not creating any jobs. In fact, one of the biggest sort of promoters of it, I think at that time, was Hewlett Packard, and they cut 14,000 jobs after their money was repatriated. And then what happens is these corporations hold it offshore until the next Republican who's going to come by and give them the same tax break. But the idea that you could keep the money there and not have it taxed before it was repatriated was in and of itself a tax break that Eisenhower, that happened under the Eisenhower administration as a way of building up Europe and Japan after World War II.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if Congress wanted to, at least under existing law, if Congress wanted to, it can tax U.S. companies on all of their income. So, including the income that they, potentially let me try speaking again, including the income that they make overseas. Now, that said, I mean, we've chosen not to do that. There has been, a series of forgivenesses until, this finally in 2017, Congress just said, we're going to give up on taxing this money. All of that, though, is sort of tangential to this case. The issue in this case is, does our elected representatives, I don't like what they did in 2017, but should the people who are elected to set our tax policy get to decide that, or should it be decided by 9 lawyers in black robes? And, there really isn't a principled way to distinguish the tax in this Moore case from all these other taxes that exist. There are, Justice Alito was ranting against it because Justice Alito wants the Republicans to win every case, and he wants Republican policies to be implemented. But if Justice Alito wants Republican policies to be implemented, and this is actually a Republican bill, it just includes this offset, he could run for Congress, and he can have the proper branch decide what our Congress is. Instead, this case is an attempt to shunt these important questions, who is taxed, how much are they taxed, to the one branch of government that is not elected and that currently has a Republican supermajority.
Let's also, I just want to hear this clip from Sonia Sotomayor, and you tell us just sort of like how it, what she's referring to specifically in terms of like they're being asked, according to Sotomayor, to essentially announce what put a definition of realization of profits, create one that is sort of like a one size fits all. And here's what she said.
If what we do is to think about a particular tax, which seems to be what we've been doing for over 100 years, to see whether that tax is income as understood by attribution or as an excise tax or by other principles, we wouldn't have to we would consider each tax on its own form. You're asking us to just announce what realization is out of context. And for the last 100 years, we've been studiously avoiding doing that because we recognize that it's dangerous to do that. To state a word like realization, we then have to come up with a working definition that applies to every piece of property and every way in which people gain wealth. It doesn't seem logical to me.
All right. Walk us through that. She's basically saying that you can't run a government that way because there is no one size fits all. Different contexts and different, and sort of like, I guess, innovation, financial innovation, calls for you to have like agencies deal with this.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I think the background to what she's saying there is that wealthy people have really good tax lawyers. And they have really good tax lawyers who, like, a lot of what they do is they cull through the tax code or they cull through Supreme Court decisions defining a particular term. And then they will design, whether it is an investment, whether it's a trust, they will design some sort of system that technically does not fit in that definition. And so, one risk you have is that if the Supreme Court comes up with a one-size-fits-all definition of an important tax concept like realization, then tax lawyers will come up with some sort of vehicle that just doesn't fit into that definition, but still allows investors to earn the same amount of money that they would earn otherwise. And so you just wind up having all of this untaxed income. The other problem is that it skews the investment markets. So, like, let's say the Supreme Court comes up with a definition of what is realization, and that definition excludes, money that is earned in the state of Idaho. What's going to happen if the Supreme Court comes up with that definition is that everyone's just going to move their money to Idaho, and like corporations are going to relocate their headquarters in Idaho, and like everyone's going to try to like get some sort of connection to Idaho in their investments because that way they can avoid taxes. And that's, not how we want a market economy to work. We don't want people to make investment choices based on what's going to help them avoid taxes. We want people to make investment choices based on what they think is most likely to, be a good investment. Right.
All right. Well, and so I guess we'll find out how they rule in June or July on that one, but as far as you could tell from the questioning, it doesn't look like it's going to be as problematic as it could have been.
I think that's right. I mean, they might write a very narrow opinion that sort of leaves open the question of what happens if Elizabeth Warren gets the majority she needs to pass her wealth tax.
Right.
But I think they realize that, like, regardless of what they think about some hypothetical future tax that probably will never get passed anyway, they shouldn't hand down a decision that nukes so much of the current tax code that the federal government can't keep the lights on anymore.
Let's move to SEC versus Jarchese, or Jarchese.
I think it's Jarchese.
Jarchese. This is a case which, and I don't know for how many years that we've been having you on and we've been talking about things like the non-delegation doctrine or the Chevron doctrine, and now the so-called major questions doctrine, which I think you and I have actually I've been interviewing you longer than that has existed in practice. But it is one that is like sort of completely turning over the apple cart in terms of like American jurisprudence, as far as I can tell. But this concept that essentially would both or inhibit Congress from delegating authority to agencies where they have expertise, and also the deference that courts have to these agencies when agencies are making, questions of executing and developing regulations to carry out congressional will. This is a case that could have touched upon that as well.
Yes. So what this case involves, first of all, the SEC is the federal agency that protects investors from fraud from the companies they're investing in. It has existed since the Roosevelt administration, and the relevant laws governing the SEC haven't been changed in more than a dozen years. So despite all of that, the Fifth Circuit, which is, the Trumpiest court in America, a court that is, seems to be looking for ways to sabotage the federal government, declared that the SEC's methods for bringing enforcement actions against people who allegedly defraud investors violates the Constitution in 3 different ways. Now, just as a general rule, if you have an agency that's been around for 80 years and the laws governing that agency haven't changed in more than a dozen years, and someone comes along and says, hey, I found that this violates the Constitution, not 1, not 2, but 3 different ways, don't trust that person. If there's a lot of litigation in the United States, if something is unconstitutional, it only gets noticed fairly quickly, and if it doesn't get noticed fairly quickly, we certainly don't miss 3 different, some of them very novel constitutional problems. So,
and particularly when it comes to something like finance, right? That's half their job is suing the U.S. government in terms of trying to release themselves from regulation.
Right. Yeah. This is a case about securities fraud, and there's lots of money, obviously, in securities. Companies have an interest in both knowing what the law is and in challenging the law if it hurts them in any way. So, if there was a serious violation going on, you'd think someone would have found it by now, much less 3 of them. But anyway, so here's what the issue is that at least the Supreme Court cared about. And the good news is that the Supreme Court looks likely to shrink this case, although they still look likely to use it in order to diminish, some of the federal government's ability to govern. So the SEC has these officials that are called administrative law judges. And what administrative law judges are is they are judges who are experts in securities fraud. And so if the SEC brings an enforcement action against someone, in this case they brought it against a hedge fund that's accused of defrauding its investors, they have the option, instead of bringing it before what's called an Article III court, sort of generalist courts that hear all sorts of issues, they have the option of bringing it before one of these administrative law judges. And, a big reason why the SEC would want to do that is because these judges actually know what they're talking about. Securities fraud is really complicated. You want judges who understand, not just the law of securities fraud, but that understand the business here, understand the concepts that they're going to be dealing with, because people who know what they're talking about are more likely to get the answer right. And so that's why you have these administrative law judges. The Supreme Court seemed very concerned that this administrative law judge process doesn't allow for jury trials. And, again, I think the reason why it doesn't allow for jury trials would be pretty obvious, because the whole point of these administrative proceedings is that you want the case to be heard by an expert and not by, 12 randos who probably know nothing about securities law.
And we should say these are not criminal cases, right? These are civil cases.
Yes. Yeah, that is an important point. These are not criminal cases. If you're being accused of a crime, you have an absolute right to a jury trial. That's the Sixth Amendment. If you're not accused of a crime, if it is a civil case, the Seventh Amendment to the Constitution says that in some civil cases you're entitled to a jury. But the phrase that it uses is at common law. Like, basically it means that you are being sued under a provision that, under a legal doctrine that derives from common law principles that have been around since like the pre-colonial years, rather than being sued under a statute, rather than being sued under an act of Congress. But in any event, the Supreme Court, based on at least what I heard in the oral argument, probably isn't going to accept any of the more Baroque, like, let's destroy the whole federal government's ability to operate theories that the Fifth Circuit latched onto. But I think it is likely to say that these sort of expert forums that exist probably cannot continue to exist, at least not in their current form.
And we should say that, like, the number of administrative courts, if you will, in the federal government, like, we're talking like we have this in immigration, we have it in, all sorts of like regulatory enforcement in the country. It would be devastating. And not to mention, just like from a practical standpoint, like, you would have to ramp up the federal judiciary. But but in terms of like having judges not be sort of, I guess, all political appointments as well, so that we could know before someone even gets into the courtroom how they're going to rule on this case. All right. So your sense is that is going to remain intact, and that's not going to be that much of a problem, although they're going to do their best on this. Let me just ask you this. Why does the Supreme Court hear these cases that like seem like they're swinging for the fences?
Yeah. It's an excellent question. I mean, and it's a particularly good question because at least this term, it seems that, like, even in this right-wing Supreme Court, a lot of the justices are looking at some of these cases going, whoa, that's too far even for us. So I think there's a few phenomena going on here. One is just that lawyers are smart, and when they see the Supreme Court move to the right-wing lawyers will bring more cases, and, more lefty lawyers will not bring a lot of lawsuits because they don't want to lose. And so you see more Hail Mary cases being brought because you just have more right-wing lawyers saying, well, now I've got a shot with this with this argument. So that's one phenomenon. The second phenomenon is you have judges, especially on the Fifth Circuit, but, in other places too, who are very partisan, who want to push the law to the right, who want to force the Supreme Court to hear issues by, like, striking down some exorbitant amount of the federal government and then requiring the Supreme Court to step in and pick up the pieces. And you also have a lot of judges on these lower courts who are auditioning, who want Donald Trump to promote them to the Supreme Court. And they think if they make a big splash and show, like, look, I'm on the cutting edge of Federalist Society thinking, that, this will help them catch the eye of a Republican president in the future. So, you have a few phenomena going on here.
Let me just explain, or have you explain to people, like, so if you're talking about like the Fifth Circuit which you describe as the most Trumpiest of circuits, you're talking about 5 or 6 states. I can't.
So the Fifth Circuit is Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi.
Okay.
So if you bring a federal lawsuit or you are sued in Texas, Mississippi, or Louisiana, when your case is appealed, it will go to the Fifth Circuit.
And the reason why the Supreme Court needs to hear that case is because if they were to rule that the SEC can't use administrative judges out of the Fifth Circuit, and that was to let stand, and the Supreme Court didn't address it, then in that jurisdiction, they wouldn't need to use, they wouldn't be allowed to use administrative judges, right? So the Supreme Court is obligated to hear that case.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, they're not literally obligated in the sense that, like, nothing's going to happen to them if they don't hear the case. But the point of the Supreme Court, the reason why we have one court at the top of our whole judicial system, is to maintain the uniformity of federal law. You don't want a situation where federal law means one thing in Michigan and means a completely different thing in Texas.
Is there a dynamic where Roberts, at this point, in the wake of Dobbs and in the wake of like these clear ethical issues that the court is having, that Roberts is like, if we can have cases where, the question is around, should we essentially have a functioning federal government, and we weigh in with a result that is yes, okay, a begrudging yes. I mean, is this part of Roberts' sort of like mentality of like, I need to bail some water here at a time where the Supreme Court legitimacy is in serious question?
Yeah, I mean, my short answer to that is you'd have to ask John Roberts that.
Right.
But like, just as from what I can tell from the outside looking in, like the Supreme Court, this group of Republican justices, the 6 Republican justices who sit on the Supreme Court right now, came in with a pretty clear agenda. They had like a list of boxes they want to check. We're going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. We're going to get rid of affirmative action. We're going to give ourselves a veto power over any decision made by a federal agency. We're going to give religious conservatives, and specifically Christian conservatives, broad exemptions from following federal and state laws. Like, they had an agenda. And I even wrote a book about that agenda called The Agenda. And as it turns out, they have now fulfilled that agenda. Like, they have checked all their boxes on the list. And so one possibility is that Roberts and maybe Kavanaugh are looking back and saying, man, everyone hates us right now. We should probably hand the liberals some victories so we don't look like a bunch of partisan hacks. The other more optimistic possibility is what's going on here is they've come in with their list, with their checklist of things that they're going to accomplish. They have now finished they've now checked all the boxes. And so having checked all the boxes, they still have a job as a Supreme Court justice, and they still have all these cases coming. And in the absence of the agenda, the optimistic take is maybe they're going to be real judges now. Maybe now that they've done all the things that they were picked to do, maybe they're going to try to be real judges now. I think we need more information before we know which one of those is the case. But it does seem to be that in this term, they are trying to rein in the most absurd elements of the judiciary after spending the previous 2 terms checking off a bunch of boxes on an agenda list.
And I guess we'll have to have you back in I don't know at what point we'll have a better sense of that. But in the meantime, Ian, if you'll indulge me with 2 more quick cases, 2 different cases. One is there is a case in front of the Supreme Court now where the Sackler family, facing essentially bankruptcy for their family, and I mean that in a colloquial sense, essentially took Purdue Pharmacy into bankruptcy and sort of rolled their liability as individuals into that bankruptcy case as a way of protecting themselves, their personal money from creditors too. I wonder your perspective on this. The Supreme Court is looking at this. And this is a bankruptcy that is not available to your average Joe, as it were. I mean, what's your take on this? And how can we best understand this case?
Yeah, so this is a difficult case. And so as I understand the issue here, so as part of the bankruptcy proceedings arising out of the opioid crisis, Purdue Pharmacy agreed, the deal was reached that they would pay, I think it's $6 billion to help provide relief to victims of the opioid crisis. And as part of that agreement, the Sackler family themselves are basically immunized from the process. So, like, the $6 billion will come out of Purdue Pharmacy, but all of the stockpiled wealth that members of this family that profited from, providing opioids to everyone, like, their personal wealth will not be touched. And the question is basically whether that should be allowed, whether we should be allowed to reach this deal where, people are going to get a lot of relief, but these people who are bad actors, or at least who have profited, some of them are the descendants of the bad Sacklers. But these people who have profited from this family that did terrible things, whether they should get to hold on to their assets. And the answer is that, like, there's a whole lot of disagreement amongst the stakeholders in this case. So, like, it's a federal agency that's actually in court saying, hey, we don't think this arrangement is fair. There is a minority of the victims of the opioid crisis who are also saying, hey, we don't think this is fair. But there's also a lot of people who, there are states that want to get their chunk of the relief money. There are individuals who want to get their, there's a lot of groups that all are like, look, like, this is some combination of, we think this is the best deal that we can get, and we're hurting right now, and we need that money. And, punishing this family that did terrible things is a secondary importance. I don't know where the Supreme Court's going to come out on this case. I mean, just as a moral and a policy matter, I'm not sure I have a view on where it should come out, because, I mean, the tension here is the tension between wanting to help as many people as we can help right now, and between making sure that this family isn't enriched for its unjust action.
Right. And lastly, let me ask you this question, because it's come up. There is 36 states that have this legislation that says if you support BDS, you can't get a state contract. The most famous is that case out of Texas, where a speech therapist was fired, working with the school district because they had supported BDS in some fashion or had a website or something to that effect. That case came up to the Supreme Court, I think, in at the beginning of this year, and was rejected. What's your sense of, like, how does something like that get resolved? It seems so blatantly against the First Amendment. We hear a lot of people complain about lack of free speech because, somebody got booed and chased off of a college campus. But these are literally the government saying, this is one type of protest we're going to punish you for.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't followed this case very closely, but I can give you some general First Amendment principles.
Great.
So it does sound sketchy. I mean, the argument that these states can make is, as a general rule, the government does have a lot of power over how it wants to spend its own money. And so if the government, doesn't want to hire a particular, the federal government, especially in Democratic administrations, uses this power all the time to say, if you want to get a contract with the federal government, you need to pay up the prevailing wage. If you want a contract with the federal government, you cannot discriminate against, the following individuals. And we don't want the government to lose the power to say, if you want to work with us, here are the things that you need to do, because often that leads to a lot of very good worker-friendly things happening.
But all that, from my understanding, has been tested in court as to whether it's a compulsion of speech, right? The idea that, and that, the right wing has always tried to say, you can't tell us that our employees have to wash their hands. You're compelling our speech in some way, and those have failed. So this is it's one thing to say we want the government to be able to impose certain requirements on contractors. It's another to say we want to inhibit their speech in a pretty explicit way. I mean, this isn't like we're forcing you to, or keeping you from saying you don't have to wash your hands when you go out and serve people food. This is pretty explicit.
Yeah, so I think the way that I would analyze, and again, I haven't read the briefs in this case, so like there might be other case law I'm not aware of, but I think that I would analyze these using the rationale that the court has often used for government employees. So like the rule, if you are a government employee, is essentially the government can control what you say within the scope of your employment. So like if I am a math teacher employed by the state of Texas, I can't walk into class every day and decide I'm not going to teach math. I'm going to teach, 16th century Japanese art history.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with 16th century Japanese art history, but I'm not. That's not what I was hired to do. I was hired to teach math, and the state can control my speech in that context. But when I am speaking about a matter of public concern, when I'm off the clock, and especially if I'm conveying information that I might have special access to, that there's a matter of public concern because I am, because I'm inside the system, that is normally First Amendment protected speech. And so, if Texas is hiring someone because Texas wants to convey a position on, the Israel-Palestine conflict, I think it could tell, if it hires a PR consultant to convey Texas's position that it is pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, I think that Texas could demand that PR consultant say the thing that the PR consultant is being hired to do. But if Texas is hiring someone to, provide school lunches, your position on Israel and Palestine is irrelevant to whether or not you can provide school lunches. That person isn't being hired to have a viewpoint on Israel. That person is being hired to provide hamburgers. And so I would think that in the case of the person who is not being hired for something that is any way relevant to Israel and Palestine, they're allowed to, on their own time, say what they want to say about Israel and Palestine. But again, I'd have to review the briefs in this case to give specifics about how I think it should come down.
Well, Ian Millhiser, I can't thank you enough for walking us through these things. You made it possible for me not to have to finish law school years and years ago. And the level of indebtedness I feel to you for that, I cannot express in words. Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox, really appreciate your time today.
All right, thank you.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take your phone calls and we will have fun.
Have fun.
And, we're not going to go too crazy because we got to save some of the fun for tonight.
Oh, yes.
When we have the final showdown.
I mean,
where is it going to be?
Whatever. Who cares?
Alabama.
Who cares?
The drama in Alabama.
The
anticlimax
the anticlimax in Alabama.
You know that
Matt took a day off yesterday for his birthday.
It was actually to
he's
lament.
Completely over it right now. Whatever.
It was a day off to lament the exit of Doug Burgum to the campaign.
He's so pissed.
I mean, you're just
so
like
pissed.
you're like what's the meaning of life?
I already have
Burgum's?
seasonal affective disorder. It's December,
Oh my God.
then the only sunshine in my life was Doug Burgum's campaign for Republican primary.
I have a light box back there, incidentally.
Yeah, I need it.
You can use it.
DeSantis' team after the Newsom debate referred to it as the Thrilla in Alpharetta because it was in Alpharetta,
DeSantis'
Georgia.
team,
and that's why he is going nowhere.
Yeah.
The Thrilla in Alpharetta.
But the big thing is, folks,
really rhyme.
we are less than 6 weeks away from the first Republican primary. There's a caucus, right?
Iowa.
In Iowa. So this is it. I mean, we are off to the races.
And one person is already near the finish line.
I mean, we sort of know who the nominees are going to be, barring any force majeure type of situations, which, again, I think we've never been in a scenario where a force majeure type of situation has such potential for happening, but one never knows.
Wait, can you just elaborate that metaphor?
Yeah, that's like the nicest way of Sam saying that one of them's gonna die.
Oh no, one could.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Or could.
Yeah, I mean, that being that like a a force of nature could change who the
you mean Deus Ex Machina?
No, Deus Ex.
I thought force majeure was the thing where like the guy didn't help his family and ran away.
That's the name of the movie, but that came from that is a contractual term.
It means like a cataclysmic event.
It means a cataclysmic event. So if I hire you to work on my movie, but all of a sudden like the show business ends, or there's an earthquake, or there's a fire and it destroys the studio, then we're released from our contract.
Gotcha.
Deus Ex Machina is like a literary term where like, how am I going to resolve this? I know.
Something else.
I know. Here's a... It just so happened he bumped into the key that's going to open up the secret room, and that's
right.
it.
Yeah, I gotcha. I've never heard it outside of the movie context, so that makes sense.
Didn't you get your master's in literature?
Yeah, but not
This is
law.
like that moment where you told me you hadn't heard of Death of a Salesman.
I do.
I still have trouble getting over that. Yeah.
Well, the problem is Glengarry Glen Ross. I thought that was an adaptation of Death of a Salesman but I was misremembering something somebody said about it, which is they called it Death of a Fucking Salesman.
Okay, got you. All right. I mean, we're really airing some dirty
theater.
laundry.
I mean, I was
here.
born in 1988. You want me to understand theater? Like, nah.
That's so
lost
terrifying. It's so terrifying. I've got my high school reunion, and I graduated before you were born.
Yeah, when is that? That's coming
It's in
up
January.
soon. Right, in the abandoned old school that's
Well,
about
it's not
to be
abandoned.
demolished.
Yeah, I don't know if it's abandoned yet.
Oh, no, yeah, but still
this could be
eerie.
the last year that it's open, or maybe I don't think they've moved into but it's going to be eerie. Oh
You
yeah,
should carve your initials into the wall or something.
well, they're going to tear it down. So what's the point? Nobody's going to see
symbolism.
Nevertheless, tonight is the debate, and it is your last opportunity to hear us mock all of these people. And we're going to have to do some extra mocking because we want to make sure that the product we give you is different enough from what you could get from those people who paid for the rights to cover it, I guess. Or maybe, did they pay? Did they bid for this? Who knows?
This should all be fair use. It's about the future of the democracy of this country, or whatever's left of it. So it's kind of depressing to me that these debates are commodified and held on to by for-profit cable news stations. But, maybe that's a bit of a third or fourth order thing.
Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. You people power this show. And so when you become a member at jointhemajority.report.com, you allow this show to survive and thrive and to sometimes, get a little bit dry and weedy. That's the kind of work we like to do here. Completely lacking in entertainment value in times and make you feel like you're sitting in a classroom.
I mean,
audience retention poison.
You're doing a great job of selling the debate tonight, Matt, and the show in general, Sam.
That's true. That's
right.
true.
Matt says, "What's the point?"
We'll have some fun. I'll see you out the trail.
Yeah, we're going to move into the fun half. That's where things get lively.
Yes. We have
I
some
can't
fun
tell you
clips
how
today.
many times I was told. I mean, now people don't even mention it anymore, but like a long time ago, I was like, you should be doing the second half for free. And the first half should be the member show because that's for people who want it. And I'm like, no.
No, that doesn't make sense.
I mean, it does make sense from a commercial standpoint because the second half is much more accessible.
Right, but we clip parts of the second half, so it's that some parts of it are free.
But
and
this is even pre-YouTube, like
Yeah.
where people are saying, like, not everybody is going to want to hear the details on a case about the SEC.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care.
Well,
at
they
one
have
point,
to.
the whole show was given over to the Janus case, or the one that came before that about public sector unions. Every other episode, and we would do a 5 days a week episode, was on that one case. I got stuck in a jag. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, and the Majority Report blend.
Yes.
Which you can get at justcoffee.coop. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off that Majority Report blend. You can get other blends too, but
Why would you?
Emma.
Yes. ESPN. We are going, on
really like in a daze.
a little bit. Your soliloquy put me in a bit of a trance. Anyway, so
that was the point I was trying to make.
There you go. On ESPN, we spoke about like the really, incredible Week 13 in terms of like determining who the really elite teams are. The 49ers bullying the Eagles, the Chiefs kind of falling apart. I made a passionate case for Tyreek Hill for MVP. He's the only one who, I think should be considered at the top of the list. And then on Thursday, Bradley and I will be giving our picks against the spread. This is the unfortunate reality of Bradley starting to heat up late in the year. He went 3-0, and I'm starting to get a little nervous. So check us out tomorrow, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
Last night on Left Reckoning, we had a conversation with Vaclav Masek Sanchez, Guatemalan columnist and sociologist, on the lawfare being conducted against President-elect Bernardo Arevalo. I mean, they have a lame duck term that stretches from like September to January, which is not great, for instance, if there are right-wing elements and judges that are trying to overthrow the results of an election. It gives them a lot of time to work. So we talked about that with Vaclav, had a really great discussion about that and how the legacy of coups and violence in Guatemala plays into what we're seeing now. I had no idea. I knew Arevalo was an anti-corruption candidate. I didn't know that his father was the first democratically elected. I think I knew, but I've forgotten that his father was the first democratically elected president of Guatemala back in the 40s. Yeah, he ran as a anti-corruption guy and won, and now the corrupt system is trying to outlaw or not let him take his place as president. So check that out last night, patreon.com/leftreckoning.
All right, folks, see you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go smell it.
Libertarians. They're so stupid, though. Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Mac.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
654 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
Call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news.
Do we?
We have more than doubled our viewership on Rumble as of today, breaking through the vaunted 25.
Well, we're definitely over 20 because we did lose 3. 4. Actually, we lost 4 now. We're at 23 watching, but we were at 27.
Don't drop off. Don't drop off, you 23 folks.
Well, nevertheless,
hold strong.
We are at the vaunted more than 20 concurrent viewers mark on Rumble. And to that, I say, poggers. There you go.
Also, stop shadow banning us over there. That's
Yeah,
clearly why we're not doing more.
They gave us a green check supposedly, but they don't fix the hinky search thing. So you got to like search, the majority report with Sam Seder to find us.
Huh. Why can't they just
Big
put
tech
us?
is in bed with big comp.
Yeah, they got to put us on the front page. Just stop shadow banning.
Also, news yesterday that I neglected to say about the primary. We mentioned that the Democratic primary is all messed up, in part because the Democrats wanted South Carolina to go first because that's what got Joe Biden elected last time, because he was able to essentially, woo a lot of the conservative voters from there, even African American voters in South Carolina, obviously like the base of the party there, and largely across the Democratic Party, but that the South Carolina voter tends still to be on the more conservative side. But New Hampshire, I think they have it in their constitution, so they've got to do their primary earlier than the South Carolina primary. And I don't know if Joe Biden's going to be there. So what's his face? Phillips is probably going to win there, or could. I don't know if Kennedy announced the other day, Super PAC backing him, American Values 2024, is going to pursue getting on the ballot in 10 states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Nevada, New York, and Texas. But he is no longer in the Democratic primary. I don't have a report on what states Marianne Williamson has gotten onto at this point. Don't know that she's announced any.
I mean, her staffers that have left her campaign had said that don't support her. She's not really making any headway on ballot access, and this seems to be a continuation of that. Which
we don't know. I haven't heard anything. I don't want to make an assessment one way or another. We did find that on Monday of this week, Arkansas election officials said that this is according to the AP, online news personality Cenk Uygur, who was born in Turkey, cannot appear on the state's Democratic presidential primary ballot next year. The determination comes weeks after Uygur proclaimed that he had become the first naturalized citizen on a presidential ballot after filing paperwork with the state and the Arkansas Democratic Party. Uygur's parents immigrated to the U.S. from Turkey when he was 8. Quote, "My office has received your candidate filing paperwork," said Arkansas Secretary of State John Thurston in a letter to Uygur. "However, based upon your own proclamation, you are not qualified to hold the elected office for which you filed. Therefore, I cannot, in good faith, certify your name to the ballot." The Constitution sets simple requirements for president. A candidate must be at least 35 years old and a, quote, natural-born citizen. Uygur said in a statement, "This is the last form of acceptable bigotry in American society, and I'm going to fight it with every fiber of my being. I'm not going to accept that I don't belong in my own country." I don't. I mean,
fair enough in terms of that not being. I don't think that it's right that only people born on American soil can run for president. But I think you gotta first change the Constitution and then run.
I don't think you have to be born necessarily on American soil. You can be born in. I think they found in like if your parents are both American and you're. I don't know what was it. How did McCain get away with that?
He was on the military territory.
Oh, was he
right?
on military territory? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we also have an age requirement, and there's an argument that maybe if you can vote at age 18.
Yeah.
Maybe you could be president then too. But I think, in my estimation, this might have been something that you want to resolve
first
prior to raising funds for that. But your mileage may vary. What else should we get to here? All right, a couple of IMs. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has announced that the special election for New York 3 to replace disgraced former Congressman George Anthony Kitara DeVolder Santos will take place on February 23rd, 2024.
I forgot the other reason I was depressed.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of
Santos.
days. Dave the iRed. Sam, are you going to talk with Matt? We know it was his birthday yesterday, but no headlines. I don't follow.
You did headlines this morning, didn't you?
Yeah. Pan Burger Partner just wanted whomever to know there's no fun half link in the app for Tuesday 12/5. Update. Okay, sorry. And Binder Dad just updates. It's February 13th, not 23rd for Kathy Hochul. Ben from Ohio writes, Ben from Ohio. Okay. Kevin McCarthy.
Ben from Ohio.
Oh, Kevin McCarthy not running for re-election. We don't have any audio on that, I don't think.
It broke right before the show.
What should we get to? What do people feel like here?
I mean,
Ryan Grimm. Let's do
yes.
Ryan Grimm's new book is out yesterday. The title of which, I don't have it right in front of me.
It's his follow-up to, I think it's called The Squad.
Yep.
But it's his follow-up to his previous book, which was We've Got People, which is great.
And there's an excerpt out today talking about how, which I hadn't gotten to yet, that AOC, in her over the course of her campaign, or I think after she won the primary, I think it was, and was becoming such a big hit, she was offered $100,000 from AIPAC to start the conversation about how we could support her in the future, and they rejected that funding. And that's just one excerpt. It's a great history. And it gives you, I think, a better understanding of the dynamics that are taking place now and that are going to take place in the coming years. Ryan Grimm was on CNN last night. They were talking about an interview he did with Ted Cruz, who was unabashed in saying, I'm not going to condemn anything Israel does, regardless of all the horrendous statements various have made. In fact, Ted Cruz wouldn't condemn things that even the Israeli government condemned by these speakers. But here is, I think, even the more relevant part is Grimm on there giving some pushback to...
So, Aaron,
we were talking about this yesterday.
Yes, Aaron Burnett, I mean, clearly at CNN, they're trying to push this controversy, this clip that where Dana Bash questioned Pramila Jayapal about sexual violence and claims of sexual violence against Israeli women by Hamas. And Jayapal condemned it in the clip, and yet Bash persisted a few times in that interview to say, well, why won't you condemn this, essentially? Which is it was an effort to smear her and other members of the squad for their continued advocacy for Palestinian rights. And let's also be clear that there have been claims made by Palestinians that they had been sexually abused or raped in Israeli prisons, which gets no coverage.
But, we talked about this yesterday. I think like the smearing of them is a second order thing. The idea is, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Second order. And again, I want to remind you, the by second order, I mean the question of whether feminists are, advocating or protesting in regard of Israel. That is a second order question. The first order question is there was an attack, and Hamas certainly committed war crimes in their assault. There is an argument, technically, that because they're occupied by Israelis under international law. But I think, in terms of...
You can still commit war crimes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's they committed war crimes in that instance. And the other first order question is, what are the war crimes that Israel are committing now? Instead, we move it to this sort of meta conversation. And here's Ryan Grimm
and a
taking
backwards
issue with
looking
that.
conversation. Look back in the rearview mirror. Don't look to the side or the front where the war crimes are happening right now.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who is the chair of the Progressive Caucus, put out a statement. And it says in part, quote, "Let me be completely clear again that I unequivocally condemn Hamas's use of rape and sexual violence as an act of war. This is horrific, and across the world, we must stand with our sisters, families, and survivors of rape and sexual assault everywhere to condemn this violence and hold perpetrators accountable." Now, Ryan, the reason that she's making this statement, as you know, is because she faced criticism for these remarks on Sunday, and it harkens back to October 7th, to Dana Bash.
I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned all of the actions. Absolutely. The rape, of course. But I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours. And if they do not comply with international humanitarian law, they are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them to be able to build the kinds of allies, to keep public opinion with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another. That is not what international humanitarian law says.
Okay, with respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned it back to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians.
So then subsequent to that, she had come under a lot of criticism. She's now put out that statement. And I'm just wondering, Ryan, that statement that she's now put out may indicate she's under quite a bit of pressure, and it may put her at odds with the most progressive members of her party, which is a crucial part of your book about the squad, where you say 2024 could be a
Let me just say, there's
do-or-die.
another way of phrasing what she just said. And that is, it gives us an indication that the pressure that we have actually actively asserted in trying to change the discourse from what is actually happening now to make this, whatever you want to call it, conflict, assault, ethnic cleansing, near genocide upon the Palestinians living in Gaza. We're going to turn it into an internecine battle between 6 or 7 members of Congress and the chair of the Progressive Caucus. Like, I mean, the idea,
It's so insane.
And this is, be aware that this is what's going on here. Continue.
Quite a bit of pressure, and it may put her at odds with the most progressive members of her party, which is a crucial part of your book about the squad, where you say 2024 could be a do or die moment for their political futures. And, when you talk about the squad and Jamal Bowman and AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, why is this such a crucial moment?
Well, I think this will be one of the key moments that we look back on, years from now and say, remember when Representative Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, was made to put out multiple statements reaffirming the fact that she condemns sexual violence? I think that will be a window into how warped this has gotten. Just like I said, it's December 5th. We're talking about October 7th. And what has happened between October 7th and December 5th is, I think, what history is really going to remember from this time. And we'll look at moments like this as ways that it was rationalized and allowed to continue. So I don't actually think she's going to face any criticism from the squad for this. There's nobody in the squad, or any, I hope, anywhere in the world, who wouldn't also just unequivocally condemn sexual violence by anybody at any time.
But you do think at this moment, this is a turning point for the squad itself?
For sure. So you've seen, as I write about in 2022, AIPAC and Democratic Majority for Israel spent nearly, between $40 and $50 million kind of purging critics of Israel from the party, trying to kind of minimize the size of the squad and also get squad-like members to kind of moderate their position on Israel and Palestine. Democratic Majority for Israel was founded January 2019 in direct response to Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and the rest of the squad kind of being sworn into Congress, not in response to anything they necessarily said, just the mere fact that there were going to be kind of 2 Muslim women serving in Congress. Now AIPAC is saying that they might spend up to $100 million in this next cycle. And so I know you had Summer Lee on CNN earlier. So we're gonna this is the question is being called, and whether which direction they take will be determined, I think, by this kind of upcoming clash with AIPAC.
Good job, Ryan.
Good job, Ryan, on your final appearance on CNN.
Yes.
At least in this era, he was very artful in making sure that this was placed in proper context, because it is absurd. It is beyond absurd that one needs to provide multiple condemnations for whatever sexual violence has occurred, whether it be in the Hamas attack or whether it be in Israeli prisons, whether it be in the West Bank, regardless. The idea that is the primary focus of conversation is a concerted effort by those who would defend Israel's actions now to change the conversation. That's basically what it is, and put critics of Israeli action on the defensive.
Yeah, and reinforce, I would say, racist tropes about Palestinians and Arabs as being savages who don't respect women, as Israeli bombs rain down on women, something like 60 to 70% of the civilian deaths that are now up to 16,000 are women and children. So, it reminds me of the coverage of our war on terror, particularly as it relates to Afghanistan, and that we were going there with our tanks and our bombs to liberate the women of Afghanistan. We care so much about women. That's why we got to bomb and kill these people, just like Israel just cares so much about sexual violence against women, and that's justification for their crimes. It works it's a distraction and then also a dehumanization tactic.
And it's often the same, a similar cast of characters. David Frum is attacking Heidi Matthews, who's a law professor who's focused on issues of sexual violence in war scenarios, and she's just tweets something that I think is just objectively truthful. She tweets, "Is wartime sexual violence a horrific crime? Yes, with no mistake, but sexual exceptionalism is also traditionally used to whip up support for entire military campaigns. We see Israel and the U.S. doing this now to justify prolonged, disproportionate air and ground war." And none other than David Frum tweeted that, but it omitted everything after the yes, but. Trying to make a point. And if David Frum is taking a keen interest in something, I think it's probably because he's rationalizing people dying somewhere.
Yeah, and also one more point on this: how disconnected do you have to be from, I think, just standard temperature taking of politics to think that this would cause a schism between Pramila Jayapal and the squad?
Oh well,
she's trying to will it into existence, sure, but how can you be that? You don't even need to agree with the squad on this to understand that there would be no chance that this would cause any kind of issue.
But I think that misses the point of the exercise. The exercise isn't to to assume that that's going to happen. The exercise isn't to even promote that happening as much as it is to simply raise a titillating question and have that question debated and addressed and whatnot.
Fill time.
And exactly, to simply avoid, it is all filibuster. And like any filibuster, it's largely irrelevant unless, like, you know, you're putting out a narrative that gets intriguing so that people can ask that question. That is a good question. Will it? I guess time will tell.
I guess it
would be intriguing.
Perhaps that's a moment of naivete that I had to think that, like, one of the primary anchors that probably makes millions of dollars a year believes somewhat of what she's saying.
Nope.
Oh, no. That is in fact.
That's what the money's for.
That's,
Yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
And that philosophy was being piped to Earth.
But good for Ryan Grimm. That was a
really great.
way
Yeah,
to-
so satisfying. And he has such a calm tone. He just does it so easily.
Too bad. That's his last time on there.
Yeah.
Nice to see the guy. I don't know if I would be going with the wins or not, but nevertheless. Jonathan Armstead, rest in peace to Norman Lear. What he did for sitcoms like All in the Family and The Jeffersons, Good Times, I would add to that. I mean, there's so many. Maude.
Isn't he the main sitcom guy?
Yeah.
He was the main sitcom guy of the 70s, but what he did with sitcoms was his sitcoms were political. They were really political at that time. I mean, you know, for comedies and for television, I mean, it wasn't, you know, I'm not talking full on satire, but they were pretty political. And then starting People for the American Way and Right Wing Watch, that guy lived what could have been two lives. Oh my God, no, I got that already. Fizzy Drinks, Sick Burn, Sam. Thanks. I'm not sure what that was reference to. How about Viva Swampy? Said Live Free and Die. L.I. from Jersey, Viva Swami sounds like a very good post-rock band. Majority Report Wardrobe Coordinator. Any of these APAC DMFI primaries succeed, you can kiss 2024 goodbye. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think that it's a problem for progressive politics if it does. If they don't, if they fail, that's very encouraging insofar as that it should inhibit their ability to raise money in the future, but one never knows. Anthony Scalia's ghost, make sure to pour one out for the Burgermeister. Texas leftist, the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem has put in an incredible nativity scene with baby Jesus laid in rubble and debris rather than a manger. Every time I think about it, I start to cry. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's good.
Had you seen that?
No, but I saw someone say, like, it's very difficult to get into the Christmas cheer as the Holy Land is being pumped. And that's fair enough. Like, not that, you know, we need to make, like, Christmas cheer the prominent, you know, thing we need to be engendering or whatever.
It is something that I've often thought, like, if I was still, I mean, I was never super Catholic, but if instead of becoming an atheist in my teenage years, I became a Catholic, it's strange to me to, like, be like, oh yeah, everything that's going on in the Holy Land is fine. Like, we just need to support Israel in that. It's like, can we maybe get some peace in those places that I hear about in the Bible?
It is. It makes me very suspicious about some of the edicts of the religiously pious.
Yeah.
Although we should say, like, in terms of, like, the Pope has been calling for a ceasefire and things like that. There's some consistency from some religious leaders, but definitely not evangelical Christian leaders in the United States who are supposedly much more accepting of Jews, according to Dennis Prager, than
not
European
not like
Christians.
Those European anti-Semites.
Yeah.
Christians here are free from that blight.
Right.
I mean, more often than not, when you see horrendous things being said about Palestinians, dehumanizing things, it is from a fundamentalist Jew. I should say, in terms of Jews. Vivek rhymes with "oh, for Christ's sake," says Ryan and Callie. You know who is anti-Semitic if you aren't the right kind of Jew? Bibi Netanyahu.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're the wrong shade.
Well, also in terms of how you practice on
That's
some level, too.
Yeah.
The Left Reckoning fan, please do cover the hypocrisy and stupidity showcased by the right wing in the hearing featuring Harvard and MIT heads. What a way to misquote them and call them anti-Semitic. Speech is not violence. Conduct is. Oh, wait.
That was the subject of the, Dave Portnoy op-ed on barstoolsports.com that's getting a lot of attention.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Elise Stefanik did some questioning of basically college administrators about their campus policies surrounding anti-Semitism. And, the headline is that, I don't want to butcher it actually, but something to the effect of that they refuse to condemn like the
calls for genocide, which is
genocide.
From the river to the sea and intifada.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's conflation of all that stuff.
Speaking of conflation, Israeli President Isaac Herzog was on MSNBC's with MSNBC's Ana Cabrera. Just a reminder. This is the guy who said there really is no such thing as innocent civilians in Gaza because they all voted. They could have staged a coup against Hamas.
Also, we don't know how those kids are dying. Can't be certain.
And just to be clear, understand that if you don't like Donald Trump, according to this guy, anything Donald Trump did that was wrong was you are morally and practically culpable for because and could pay theoretically with your life because you did not stage a coup to get rid of him.
Or it's the same, this has been said before, so I'm restating many people's points on this, but this is the justification that bin Laden used to attack the World Trade Center, which is that we are collectively responsible in the United States for the crimes of our government.
And with that said, that's the proper introduction for this guy.
I understand you're making efforts to protect the civilians, but we've all seen the pictures of the destruction, the desperation, and the death toll is climbing. In fact, an IDF spokesman confirmed yesterday that the military believes about 2 civilians have been killed in Gaza for every Hamas militant. Is that acceptable to you?
I'm unaware of this quote by a IDF spokesperson, but I will say the following. This war is a war that is not only between Israel and Hamas. It's a war that is intended really, truly to save Western civilization, to save the values of Western civilization. We are attacked by a jihadist network, an empire of evil emanating from Tehran with its forks in Lebanon with Hezbollah, with Hamas in Gaza, with the Houthis in Yemen. This empire is in Iraq, and this empire wants to conquer the entire Middle East. And if it weren't for us, Europe will be next and the United States follows. I remind all about 9/11 and thereafter, meaning there are extreme fundamentalist thoughts that want all of us out, and that's what we are facing, and the world has to understand it. We didn't want this war, God forbid. We went through hell, but we have to defend our people and enable everybody to go back to the region and live in peace. That's what we are doing for the sake of the entire world.
You mentioned.
I wonder if, I wonder if there is any sentient person who had any question about this, as opposed to just sort of like willing to chime in and already be predisposed, that actually believed that for even a millisecond. The idea that this is a clash of civilizations, the idea that that Israel is a bulwark to Hamas coming to Europe or America. Hamas exists because of Israel. Hamas was nurtured by Israel. Hamas was allowed to thrive and encouraged to thrive because it undermined the ability of the Palestinian people. These are Netanyahu's words 20 years ago, not mine. Undermined the move for Palestinian statehood by dividing their leadership. It's just fantastical that this is about a clash of civilizations.
Well, in a sense, it is about preserving Western civilization. If you define Western civilization as like Western colonial empire, I mean, that's certainly a part of it. But like that's this really scary kind of racist undertones there that I think we're starting to see that kind of rhetoric become more clear to people. It's the civilized versus the savages. That's what it is. It's about the people who like gay folks. That's why we bring rainbow flags and over to the areas that we're killing civilians at. And that's why we talk about how Hamas are mass rapists. Like, these are the people that are less than human. They're not civilized. They're not cosmopolitan. They're not first world. And so in that sense, they deserve to be conquered no matter the human cost. And, I just want them to pick one. Are you indigenous to this area, to what is now Israel, or are you Western? Pick one, Isaac Herzog, because you can't really have it both ways.
Yeah, and the big problem with the class of civilizations thing, which Likud party, like Netanyahu types, really welcomed in the 90s, is that it takes it out of the structure of a settler colonial context, and then it becomes which is what a lot of people that don't pay attention or just hear about this in the news one time is, these people have been fighting for thousands of years and nothing's going to stop it. And that's a big
it's
problem.
actually not true.
Yeah.
Jews, Palestinian Arabs, Christians lived in peace.
It's nationalism, not religion.
During, I don't know, for centuries in that region.
Read Avi Schleim.
It was the introduction of nationalism, was both Zionist nationalism and then as a reaction both to that and, the unwinding of British Empire, Arab nationalism. So we shouldn't fix this problem with more nationalism would be my prescription. But.
Yeah, especially because when we're talking about Western civilization, what that really means is the continuation of like a white dominant power structure in the world.
Penny in New Mexico, I have colleagues who are doing trauma healing work with former Palestinian prisoners in occupied territories. Many women reporting sexual violence from Israeli guards. Yeah. Timuth Link. Happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. Happy belated birthday, Matt. Here in Britain, the official inquiry into the British government's response to COVID-19 is continued today with Boris Johnson giving evidence. A reminder to British centrists that you do not get to point fingers for Boris Johnson being prime minister after you did everything in your power to enable him at the expense of Jeremy Corbyn. Also, Emma, sorry if my Bugatti joke yesterday was over the line.
Nope.
Still stand by my
don't
right
worry.
to ridicule Tim Pooley, though.
You're all good.
Brooklyn Sue, as a lefty from way back, I can tell you I first heard the phrase from the river to the sea used in the 80s in D.C. by Palestinian activists and their supporters. Judge and Judy Executioner. Sam, are you at all worried about the new Daily Wire animation, Mr. Bircham, that many are saying is coming for Bob's Burgers crown? Genuinely has some impressive talent in it, like Danny Trejo, Patrick Warburton, Rob Riggle, and most importantly, Roseanne Barr.
I didn't know Riggle and Trejo were
conservative.
Idiots.
I think
that's a bummer.
Well, Riggle is a former Marine, which is the only way I would have any sort of understanding of any conservative coding surrounding him. But,
I mean, I love the NFL, but we know.
Oh, right, and he's like a big, he's like a.
He does
surrogate.
sketches for Fox, NFL on Fox, if I'm not.
Yeah,
mistaken.
I don't know. I don't know the politics of all of those people. Certainly, many of them I know the politics of.
Like Adam Carolla.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also,
the lead.
You paid a certain amount of money and you're just doing animation becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah. You have to be on set with all those guys.
You don't have to be on set with them. You don't have to have your face associated with it.
True.
You do an animated show like that, really. Only the fans know who you are, not the non-fans. It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm sure they could hire actual legit writers for that. It's in some ways, them doing an ongoing television series that would be funny is more likely than them doing a movie one-off. But I would also say that if they do more than 22 episodes of that show, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I'd recommend our buddy R.M. Brown did a. If you want to want to see more clips of Lady Ballers without actually paying the Daily Wire, which I wouldn't recommend, R.M. Brown did a video 2 days ago, Lady Ballin', where he looks into more clips of that. So I would recommend that.
This cartoon that they're doing, I think, is also on the Daily Wire Plus. I mean, look, they have a tremendous amount of money, and I don't know where it all comes
Crowder.
from. Well, I mean, just think about the offer that they made to Crowder, and there is no way they generated this money. They have received massive investment. Now, it's possible, within the realm of possibility, that some entertainment magnate said, oh, I know, I've got a great idea on how to make a lot of money in entertainment. I'm going to give it to people who are incapable of generating high quality entertainment, and I'm going to give them $100 million plus to create that entertainment. Or it's more likely that ideological money gave them a ton of money. And, things like you don't go out and spend $1 million on Facebook ads like Ben Shapiro was like 4 or 5 years ago, at least, unless you've got a ton of cash that is literally given to you to grow your business. So the real question is, when do they realize they're failing on any particular entertainment project? With the movie, you spend it once, the bleeding is contained. With a TV show, like I say, if they're going into their 23rd episode, more than likely what this is going to be is like, we pay you for 5 episodes and we'll do 5 episodes every year. Or that at the end they'll say, we meant it to be a limited run. It's going to be fun to watch them bleed out of this cash, but it could take years and years. So we'll see. Rob from Dedham. Didn't Abby Martin challenge it? She may have, but again, it didn't reach the Supreme Court. New Jersey mailman. Did you see Jake Tapper interviewing a congressional Democrat from Florida about Jayapal? During that interview, they talk about Nazis who are Republican. Then Jake ends the conversation asking about the congressman if he thinks people in his party would vote against the Hamas resolution, and then says he thinks specific Dems would vote against it, but wouldn't be brave enough to name who he was thinking of. Such absolute disgusting segment. It is amazing. The desire to try and make the news of the day about the degree in which Hamas is condemned. It's fascinating to watch this in real time. And it is very similar to the dynamic that existed in the run up to the war on Iraq. But the run up to the war in Iraq was such a pig pile that
What's a pig pile?
Just so many people jumping on one person.
Okay.
As opposed to now where there really is like a sense that there is at least almost 2 sides that
more distributed.
Yes, the argument here is more distributed. Back during the Iraq War, like you couldn't, they'd come for you and you'd get annihilated because there was no other mechanism in which to push back. Chris Burdick, I picture Kevin McCarthy ending his time in Washington the way actor Kevin McCarthy ended his original invasion of the Body Snatchers, running through the streets and screaming like a madman. Neil from Trinidad, MR Crew guys and gals, did you hear what Julianne Margulies said about blacks being brainwashed?
Yes, Juliana Margulies. And I'm watching season 6 of The Sopranos, and she's in that. And then that news broke, and she's so good in that show too. I don't watch The Good Wife or whatever that she's in, but it was pretty bad. Like lots of folks really revealing themselves and their allyship to be completely performative and transactional.
Well, and to be a little bit more charitable, not the news, but she's talking about people being brainwashed and propagandized. It's like, yeah, take a look in the mirror, lady.
I don't pay too much attention to the Julianne Margulies beat, but
I mean, you've mispronounced her name now twice, so.
Margulies.
Yeah, I don't think you're melodramatic at all.
Worcester Don Draper. I just checked, and according to SpyFood.com, Daily Wire was averaging 120,000 a month this year on just Google search ads.
Oy, oy, oy.
That's effing amazing.
They're going to need to spend a lot more to try to square Candace and Ben Shapiro's divergence on Israel-Palestine.
Yeah. I mean, she's pregnant, right?
That's amazing.
Candace? Yeah. So she's going to go, my prediction is she goes on maternity leave and then
that's where she is now.
She's on it now. She's not coming back.
She did one more show after the Finkelstein one.
I mean, it's been clear for years that Ben Shapiro does not like her. And like, this is going to be the kind of thing where what's the value that she provides for the audience? I mean, who watches Candace Owens?
I'm sorry, wait a second. People are blowing through this. They spend $1.8 million a year on just Google search ads. $1.8 million on just Google search ads.
Remember that interview we did ahead of 2016 with that guy who had like the Google search results thing, and how they did research on how important it is to come up early, like particularly on the first page, but even at the top half of the page on Google search results. And now you look at Google search results and
it's all sponsored.
It's all sponsored. You have to go like the third page to find anything real.
But I just find that amazing. I just find that amazing. Relative to like knowing what kind of business we do, never mind like spending on ads.
Yeah. What do we spend on ads?
So far, we're averaging around $0 a month on ads. But if you factor in the ad buy that we did like 5 or 6 years ago, then it's probably like
amortize that over 5 years.
If you amortize that over, it could be about 15 cents. Whoopsies. But I've been thinking about an ad buy, but now I'm wondering if it's really going to be worth it. I don't know that, like, because I was thinking, like, maybe we could do a $1,200 ad buy.
Ooh, spring for that?
In a month.
Do you think there's anything to, like, it's not only that they're getting into the search results, but also, like, maybe buying some goodwill with, say, Facebook or Google?
100%. Well, I mean, look, I don't even think that's, like, explicit. Like, I mean, the bottom line is, Google wants you to keep buying the ads. And so if there's any way that they can sort of like promote you beyond buying the ads in their algorithm, and just the fact that, let's say you don't even need to necessarily do it explicitly. We're going to give more search returns on people who hit search returns, and we're not going to exclude sponsored clicks. I mean, that's all you need to do.
You just include the clicks got from sponsorship as if they're natural clicks, and voila, you have look at this viral content.
Right.
I mean, look, there are times where I'm like, we'll have a, for instance, like with Roan, when I'm thinking I need to get a shirt, they're the first place I look, because I'm thinking like, I like their shirts, but also I know that like, go in there and they know that they don't know who I am. It's like I'm going in and using the Majority Report code.
Right.
When I buy, because I also want the savings. But my point being like, and on their end, it just goes like, oh, people from the Majority Report, not the actual show, but from listening, buy the stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind that Google does that. I just can't get over that. That is amazing. Folks, I'm not going to be on the program tomorrow. So I want to right now take a moment to give a shofar and wish my sister Betsy a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Betsy.
Also, I want to note it is Pearl Harbor Day tomorrow.
Okay.
Just no relation.
Okay, that's
as far
good.
as I know.
Yeah.
And I think Larry Bird was born yesterday. But yeah. Really, Betsy's more important.
Obviously. You listed it in
arguably
Massachusetts legends, but
arguably. But that's amazing. That blows my mind. All right, let's get to some other.
I mean, 14, 15.
Yep, let's do it.
Or wait, no, there's no 15, but 14. Oh, there is 15. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you can do one. Which one do you want to do tomorrow? Should we do 14 right now? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's turn for a moment. While we have people testifying in Congress that women are being severely prejudiced against because of the existence of trans women in or being allowed to be in sports in some fashion. We got a great video of someone made of just like recounting over the past 20 years of thousands of Olympic competition, how few trans women have been in Olympics and whatnot. Nevertheless, there is someone out there who is not convinced that women are actually, in any way prejudiced against, but in fact are advantaged.
That's odd. I would have thought he was an ally.
No, here is Tim Pool showing and explaining why women have such advantages in our society. Oh, here he is. And he's showing a graph by Reuters that DEI schemes are on the ropes.
DEI schemes. No, but again, no, it's not even, this is from the Daily Mail, which is his favorite source. He's always...
well, the graph, yeah, it's hard
sure, but like the
oh, I see. They've made the graph. Okay.
Understood, but like the Daily Mail is a British tabloid, but he seems to rely on it quite a bit.
Oh, he's a centrist.
You know what we need? We need, I'm telling you guys, if you are a white person and your job has tried to put you through DEI training, file a lawsuit. File a complaint with the EEOC. They may not go for it, but file a lawsuit. If you can, I know it's not easy. The point is, a white person being told that whiteness is bad or whatever is racism, and it's illegal. If they try to do anything relating to whiteness, white people, or any other race, sue them for discrimination. Use the system as it's intended. Not allowed to do this. Now, you may get bad courts and bad judges. It's got to go to the Supreme Court. Keep suing and keep pushing. How many stories have we covered?
Pause it for 1 second. Who's going to finance this? The other thing, like, you don't think that if there was some case to be had about whiteness being bad, the right wing, there's no right wing apparatus that would be pushing this at this point?
They did it already within the context of affirmative action on college campuses. And buddy, you got what you wanted. The DEI stuff is corporations making a calculation that this will cover their ass when it comes to like any lawsuits that they may actually deal with when it comes to racial discrimination. There are studies that show that the way corporations go about this sometimes only increases racial resentment, and part of it's because they borrow from people like Robin DiAngelo and they don't do it in a constructive manner. But also part of it is just like people resent boring meetings at their job. But this is not something existential and not something that his audience should spend tens of thousands of dollars on lawsuits over.
Meanwhile, we know, yes, Adam from Indiana says, I thought Tim didn't influence his fans. Anyways, go ahead. Continue.
Call to action.
Keep suing and keep pushing. How many stories have we covered where it was like white woman discriminated against for being white wins $15 million, right? You've seen these stories? No. Hey, man, these companies are breaking the law. They're racist. And there is cash money sitting right there for you as reconciliation for the crimes, the unjust behavior of these evil corporations. They want to use race as some kind of qualifier. That is in violation. I think it's unconstitutional, but it's in violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So go after them. And then we'll see one by one. There are these dudes that go to bars that have ladies' night.
Before he gets into that, since this is such a great money-making opportunity, Timcast has plenty of money.
Why aren't they financing these lawsuits?
Take a small cut. This is
100%.
This got to be better than starting your own, athletic drink.
100%.
Can we go back 10 seconds just so we can hear how he makes this transition?
The 1964 Civil Rights Act. So go after them. And then we'll see one by one. There are these dudes that go to bars that have ladies' night, and they say, I want a drink at the discounted rate. And the bar says women only. And they say, that's illegal. And they say, too bad. So these guys then file lawsuits and win instantly. It's been going on for a long time.
Hold on for a second. Instantly? Can you win instantly in these cases? How does that happen?
It's an immediate cash
Summary
prize.
judgment. And the damages you have suffered.
Get a notification on your phone in 15 minutes.
$2. It must be $14. You would add 7 drinks, and you would have paid an extra $2. Okay.
So
Your Honor.
I want to go to happy hour after work, but I showed up at 7:01, and now the beers aren't $5. They're back to their normal at $8.
You're not being you don't get it. You're not being,
do I get instant cash?
You're not being sexually discriminated against in the way that that these ladies.
I'm being
This ladies'
temporarily
night thing is
discriminated
very funny.
against.
I'm looking it up now. If all states ladies' night events are violations of civil rights laws and are illegal, mostly judged by a state court law. California, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I mean, thank goodness we are, freedom.
Good. We'll get rid of those ladies' nights. I like it. Let's.
We can tell private businesses what they're able to do. Thank you, Tim.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Yeah,
totally
right.
in favor of that.
These guys then file lawsuits and win instantly. It's been going on for a long time. And you know what? More power to them. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, but ladies' night is good because women don't want to come out and the guys want the ladies. So they offer the ladies a discount. The ladies show up and then the guys show up. And it's like, yeah, maybe.
Pause it
Can't
for a
have your cake
second.
and
I
eat it
just
too.
love the fact he's having to explain ladies' nights to people.
I wish I could erase him saying the word ladies over and over again, like from my brain. It really is the kind of guy who comes up with a bowler hat and says, like, "Milady, can I buy you a drink?" And you say no, and then he becomes all right.
We need to summarize this argument, though. This is a guy saying this. Sorry, private businesses. The state can tell you what you can do on this evening because of racism.
I'm down with that.
Me too.
I am completely in favor of finding lady nights unconstitutional or certainly sex discrimination. All in favor of that.
Show up and it's like, yeah, maybe. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have 2 different prices, one for men, one for women. And I also love this. When the left are like, women only get paid 73 cents on the dollar for what a man makes because they're comparing apples to oranges. But at the same time, you have this trend of ladies' nights where at bars, women get discounts when they buy drinks. So spare me, dude. Women have their privileges. Men have their privileges. Men and women are different.
Exactly.
Have a nice day.
Okay.
But these guys.
There you go, folks. Men have the privilege in our society that they make more money for the same job. However, when women go out to party at bars, it's a little bit cheaper for them in those states where it's still allowed, where it shouldn't be allowed.
Also, they can just sell pictures of their feet and make $1,000 a month, as Tim Pool says.
Yes.
But the idea that, to actually calculate in your brain that, yes, on one hand, there may be wage discrimination. However, it is clearly made up on the other end when you go out and do a bar.
Obviously.
And the drinks are cheaper at those times where you go to lady nights. I think you'll find, Your Honor, if I could approach the bench, please. I think the plaintiffs here are looking for equal wages have neglected to consider Tuesday nights out on Route 1, where it is lady night, and they can get all of the appetizers they want for just $1.
I mean, it's honestly like has the Supreme Court weighed in on the fact that sometimes it's customary for men to buy women drinks too, as well. So like you got the double whammy, right? Ladies' nights, cheaper drinks, and then also the reverse sexism of men customarily buying women drinks. That's what makes it all up. Makes it up.
I like how the idea that comparing 2 different cohort of people and how they perform under the economy, whether it's men and women or say black people and white people, is like comparing apples to oranges. No, it's like comparing men to women in the economy.
Exactly.
It's he's really running out of a little bit of runway here, but he's trying to get into the manosphere space. But typically those guys who, Jordan Peterson excluded, but he has the veneer of academia. They have traditional masculine presentation, and they attempt to like kind of show off their guns and be like tough guys.
Right.
and-
Peterson speaks to their pretensions of like intellectualism.
Yes.
Jordan Poole is just some loser with
Or
a
Tim
beanie
Poole.
on.
Yeah,
What'd
yeah.
I call him?
To Jordan Poole. Close
Jordan,
enough.
right, yeah.
But Jordan Poole, not the basketball player. But like, yeah, I mean, he's really in a tough spot because he doesn't have the intellectual or the faux intellectualism of a guy like Peterson. But he also doesn't have the appearance or like the traditional masculinity of a guy like Andrew Tate. So I don't know how he's trying to like. I don't know if he can be aspirational in any way to his audience in a way that's going to like bear fruit for him if he goes down this path.
For me, I'm still stuck on the idea that this is a trend. Ladies' nights is a trend. It's been going on for literally decades and decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decades and decades.
Like, isn't the trend that they're being wound down now, as he mentions himself?
Exactly.
There's only about a minute and a half left. Can we?
Oh, yes.
close
Oh, there's
this out?
more.
Yeah.
Discounts when they buy drinks. So spare me, dude.
Spare me, dude.
Women have their privileges. Men have their privileges. Men and women are different. Have a nice day. But these guys are going to these bars and they're filing suits. And then immediately the bar's lawyer is like, yeah, what you did was illegal and you're going to lose. And you're going to lose big. You should just pay it out and stop doing ladies' night because you cannot offer different pricing based on sex. Sorry, dudes.
What
That's
about,
just a
like-
reality. I think we got to play the same game with these companies. If you work for any of these companies, you've got to stand up and say, this is against the rules, man. All in all, the final takeaway, my friends, is the year is coming to an end. We have but a month left in 2023. Can you believe it? 2024 is around the corner. And we're winning. Disney is admitting they got woke and went broke. It's incredible. Bud Light is still struggling. DEI, ESG is failing. Let's keep up the good fight and take the battlefield next year. And then come 2025, we can all sit back, order some wings, watch the game, and laugh as all the whinging leftists cry as Donald Trump gets a second term.
I'm a liberal.
How many times did this guy?
He's a liberal.
Didn't he predict that Donald Trump was going to win in a landslide?
Oh, yes.
I think he might have even said 50 state landslide.
He compared it to Reagan's reelection, if
Yeah,
I'm
can
not
we
mistaken.
bookmark this? The guy, like he knows his entire audience is just of like teenage boys. We're all going to sit back with our wings,
Crack a beer, have some wings. I mean,
and have some sushi with the boys.
Yeah, ladies and the boys. Yeah, I don't really believe he's the kind of guy that has wings and watches the game. That's...
Also, like, none of these people have object permanence. Him saying that pricing, you can't, what do you say? Different price based on sex. Well, tell that to the labor market because literally bosses
that's
buy
apples and oranges.
That's
female
the whole
labor.
point.
Yeah, how about the wages element?
That's apples and
For
oranges.
less than what they buy male labor for.
Well, that's apples and oranges.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm comparing the male apples to the female oranges.
The apples are from Mars and the oranges are from Venus.
I mean, the whole point of ladies' nights is because they value ladies as a customer more than they do men.
Because they think they'll bring men to the bar.
They'll just increase
Too.
volume.
Yes.
Period. End of story. I mean, they could do men's night, but they don't because it's not as valuable to them. So he understands the concept of like a differential in, in post, but he realizes it's wrong when he's having to pay full price for drinks, but it's okay when he's making 15% more than a woman doing the same job, type of thing.
I hope he finds happiness, Tim.
Let's I don't know what's here's Matt Walsh with I don't know, this is just like so psycho. The guy's so desperate now that his like the luster of his anti-trans stuff is worn off. He's coming down. I've seen this with people who like, had moments of their 15 minutes of fame and then they're constantly chasing it again. And the problem is that he doesn't know where to go. There's just not a lot of new territory. You can hope that like anti-Muslim bigotry will reemerge and try and ride that train. We've seen a
Sam
couple
Harris
of people.
is right there to come back. If that
Exactly. It is harder and harder, I think, for certainly in terms of like if you want to attract a younger audience, where we know the Daily Wire must be trying to do that, right? That's why they're doing this entertainment stuff. They think they're going to attract a younger audience. But the problem that Matt Walsh has is that he can only play to older people or fundamentalists. And so he goes back on this, and this is, I don't know, it just seems like this feels like the 1980s all over again. Here is Matt Walsh talking about how desperate he doesn't want his kids to be gay.
Now, if you are not the perceptive sort, you might listen to all this and say, well, this is unfair to gay couples. What if they want to have children? What are they supposed to do? Don't we need to have some kind of system in place to help them achieve their parenthood dreams? The answer to that question is no, we don't. Homosexual unions are sterile by their nature. It's not an exception to the rule when they are. It's not the result of sickness or genetic defect when a homosexual couple's unable to have children. None of them are able or have ever been able or ever will be able.
Can you pause it for a
sec?
sec?
That is a sign.
Is a sterile relationship one where, say, a woman has had a hysterectomy?
He is saying that it's only legitimate based upon the rule of Matt Walsh for you to have a child if you are sick or have a genetic defect, and then you can get a surrogate. Now,
right.
The weird part is that there is also, which you may not be aware of, two cisgender women can get married and also can have a child.
That's true.
And you don't, and they can actually give birth themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got a very narrow perspective of what constitutes gay for the sake of this this made up.
He's got one thing on his mind.
Made up theorem that he has. But go ahead.
None of them are able or have ever been able or ever will be able. That is a sign from nature, about as glaring and obvious as signs as you can ever see, that gay couples are not meant to have kids. They're not meant to have kids because they cannot ever have kids, because kids are meant to have both a mom and a dad.
Tell that to Dave Rubin.
Now, it's true that plenty of kids end up with just one of those or sometimes none, but this just means that something went wrong. In that case, you do the best you can to compensate. But with surrogacy, we are designing children from the outset to be motherless or fatherless. We are intentionally depriving them of what they are supposed to have. You know, it's true that some children grow up with one arm or no arms, but that obviously doesn't make it any more horrific or any less horrific or barbaric to intentionally chop a child's arm off. You know, the fact that some children end up that way, yes, but a child is supposed to have two arms at birth. And to intentionally design a child to only have one, we would all agree it's like mad scientist horror. But this is essentially what we're doing with commercial surrogacy. And only it's worse because it's far better for a child to be raised lacking one of his arms than to be raised lacking one of his parents. And that's why I will never applaud and cheer when we get these birth announcements from gay couples, because I'm more concerned about what the child needs than what those men want.
Those men. This sounds like somebody is directed this at one particular person. Has there been a recent birth announcement?
My ears are burning.
That is an interesting subtweet, as it were, right?
Shot across the bow.
But who's the audience for this? Like, how old do you have to be, or fundamentalist do you have to be, to subscribe to this notion that you can't have two same-gendered parents? Like my kid, like even my 18-year-old grew up with multiple friends who had two same-gender parents. probably more parents who were divorced and single parents that were cis, that were heteros. There's certainly more of those. But the idea of two parents of the same gender was like, I don't know, like the idea of was less controversial than maybe, parents who were divorced.
Yeah, that whole argument's predicated on lies, which is that it says like in a single family household to a two parent mother and father, but you get the same effect if you have two parents that are mother and father, but they just compare it to a single parent.
I mean, this is the party that says that they care about parental rights, and you can just kind of deconstruct that quite quickly, which is that it's the right for parents to exist in the way that my Bible says that they can exist, and it's the right for children to continue to live in the gender that they were assigned at birth, regardless of what they want or what kids would have to say about having two parents. If they'd rather have two dads than have one arm, I think that the children, either young or grown, would very easily say that it would be quite an easy decision for them at that point. But
Smooth Operator's got a great point here too. Matt Walsh's appeal to nature is so stupid because he literally wears glasses. Isn't nature telling him he's supposed to be blind? And I would argue, actually, no, more than that. Not only is nature saying to Matt Walsh, you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to be blind, but nature is saying you're not supposed to procreate because you're supposed to be able to, you're not supposed to be able to see. And therefore it should make it much harder for you to get food. And you should be basically with your parents the whole time and not out in outside of the home or whatever, the cave that you're in, because nature has said that your gene pool is deficient. And we want to give you a disadvantage, and you're unnaturally, because glasses don't grow in nature, you're unnaturally enhancing your ability to survive in society. And nature didn't want that. Nature did not want you to be out there. Nature wanted you not to be able to see that tiger or that whatever that natural threat was coming to get you and survive it. And that's why we got rid of your eyesight.
Natural selection.
Exactly. His wearing glasses is inhibiting natural selection.
Yeah.
And I say this as someone who is also inhibiting natural selection. Without my glasses, I wouldn't even be able to walk home.
I mean, but you don't obviously subscribe to everything needing to be natural law. And it's also just funny too how
it's weird he's wearing clothes.
They treat nature as if it's this kind of static, fixed thing that doesn't change, by the way. But also they ignore things in nature like the fact that there are same-sex couples in nature. Different animals have relationships that are same-sex that they just completely don't contend with whatsoever. But apparently that's an unnatural representation of nature within nature. Or, those penguins are just so woke.
Does he fly on planes?
Oh, yeah.
Because nature made it impossible for us to fly on our own, but yet we developed this weird ability. And I would say the same for cars. Like, human beings don't naturally move at 50 miles an hour. The whole construction of his argument
modern
is
healthcare
absurd.
Yeah.
Every medication he takes
How
is
about those
unnatural.
hair plugs? How about those hair plugs?
You think he has hair plugs? No, I don't think so. But nevertheless, I mean, the point being,
hair dye?
I don't know.
Beard dye?
Possibly.
Unnatural.
But the bottom line is, like, look around you in society and see what is unnatural and see how long you'd want to live in that world. Homes are constructed by people. They are transportation constructed by people. On and on and on. The idea that nature didn't intend this is an absurd calculation.
I mean, yeah.
And he would end up being a full-on degrowther if he genuinely believed that.
I mean, fundamentalists have been pretending like they're doing science since like the Scopes monkey trial. It's basically it's like saying actually it's intelligent design did all this stuff. Yeah, it's fundamentalism disguised as science.
Totally. Well, you're gonna have a lot of stuff to do tomorrow, I guess.
I guess so.
We didn't get to a lot of this stuff. Get to talk about Tim Pool again, and
oh joy.
But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be covering the debate, so we're going to get out of here quick. Of course, we're already 5 minutes over, so.
Nature wanted us to have 2.5 kids, a white picket fence, and a suburban lifestyle.
Exactly. Nature wanted us to do exactly what Matt Walsh prescribed.
Terrible home
What a
decor.
perfect coincidence. Jazz Massoud. Great point, Emma. Jews against white supremacy is a good group to follow. Apparently, JVP still legitimizes the state of Israel, does not fully support land back to Palestinians. Working air conditioner. I don't know what did the heads of MIT and Harvard say that so riled up so many right-wingers. Free speech absolutists. They said speech is not violence unless it's followed up by the conduct. As leftists, it should be easy for us to say that just speech is not violence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think depending on the context, speech can be violent. Of course.
It's not in this case, which is the point.
But you can actually measure these things by the implications of them and what the power dynamic is.
Yeah.
Patton from Ohio. Assuming it doesn't immediately destroy democracy, it would actually be a good thing if Trump wins, since it will further radicalize Democrats and push more people left or something.
No.
No, I'm not being serious,
Gotcha.
is the qualifier. Mark Monkey. I apologize if this gets long, but can I get a shofar for my father who passed away on Saturday?
Oh.
He had a 6-month battle with pancreatic cancer that was caused by his Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam, and the cancer, as it is often, was found by accident. He may have been very much a lib and blamed Bernie for 2016, but he was also insanely pro-union and taught me a lot about workers' rights and fighting for fellow workers rather than viewing them as competition. He was the guy who friends knew they could rely on for help even when he was having a difficult time himself. I took lessons like that to heart, and I am only happy that he is no longer in pain. Thank you, and free Palestine. Mark Monkey, sorry about your loss. Greta from upstate went to see Miko Peled in an upstate New York library last night after the pro-Israel people trying desperately to cancel. It was wild because the pro-Israel came and acted like whiny victims for library, allowing him to speak. That's hate speech, they kept crying. Can't quite follow that. Honks me off. Funny thing about Emma saying, tell that to Dave Rubin about Matt Walsh's surrogacy views. He absolutely would say it to Dave, and Dave's such a spineless piece of spineless poop that he'd just take it. Yes, that's true.
That's why he doesn't talk to any of those guys anymore.
They have different friends now. Floyd the Barber. Doesn't DEI include people with disabilities? Didn't realize disabled people were so entitled. Jobby Boonier. Tim's male guest should sue Timcast LLC for discrimination if they weren't offered poker and sushi with the boish. All right, 2 more. Space for one. Feldman's AI bit has forever poisoned the solemnity of December 7th. Don't say the year. And the final I am of the day, or maybe just this afternoon. Zane, you really have to hand it to Walsh and his ability to make up everything sound gross and creepy. It is truly unparalleled. No one in history of talk radio can make everything they say crawl directly under your skin quite the way he can. All right, folks, we'll be back tonight at about 5 of 8 for the drama in Alabama.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive.